Okay, so we're in the offices of WildlifeDirect with Jim Karani, the head of legal affairs. Okay, Jim, I haven't interviewed you so far in my Facebook Live videos. Tell us what you're working on. What are the top 3 problems facing wildlife crime in Kenya today?
So one of the key things that I'm actually doing is trying to make sure we bring wildlife traffickers to justice. So a key issue that we're finding is they have a lot of money that they can pay their way out of some of these cases.
People like that guy above your head.
Oh yeah. So the prosecution in Kenya did a stellar job, of course, with us maintaining a presence in courts to make sure that we put Faisal Ali Mohammed, one of the country's and East Africa's most high-profile trafficker, to prison. So he was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison and to pay a fine of 20 million shillings.
But there are people out there saying that he's not really in jail. Is that true?
Well, he was convicted and sentenced. Our humble belief is that he is at Shimo Latewa prison.
So he's in jail?
He is in jail.
What's it like in Shimo Latewa?
Oh, like the name says, Shimo Latewa. Well, it's a
what does it mean?
Prison. Prison is a horrible place to be in. It is really not one of the like a hostel or a hotel. He is being kept at the president's pleasure at a maximum security facility. So he is not enjoying his liberty like we would expect everybody else to.
So what are the main challenges that you face making sure that people like Faisal and other criminals, because there's obviously lots of others, because every year we have people being arrested and convicted. So what are the 3 challenges in having convictions succeed?
So one of the major things is we are not getting everybody who is involved in wildlife crime offenses. Wildlife trafficking is truly organized crime. It is very, very connected. We are seeing wildlife traffickers who are getting property and actually wildlife products like ivory from Congo all the way to Asian countries like Cambodia. Now the one question we have to ask ourselves is, it is not Faisal who's poaching. It's not Faisal who's transporting it. He's just a kingpin, someone who's making things move from one place to another. So when we just convict Faisal and let all these other people involved in this criminality thrive, then we're just making sure that the system continues to perpetrate wildlife trafficking. A lot of money. He represents, as it stands, the high caliber and high profile of trafficking personalities in Africa. They are making an ungodly amount of money. And as a result, we barely go for their money. We are happy with just a conviction and a sentence. We should go after their money. They should pay for every single elephant they've killed. And now with DNA sequencing, we are at a position where we can link poaching incidents and trafficking incidents. We can directly hold Faisal accountable for the death of elephants in every single country those elephants were poached in. But are we using that technology? Are we applying those methods? Not yet to do that.
Well, it's good enough. He's in jail for 20 years. I'm happy with that. I think that's a pretty fair sentence. What else? What are the other challenges you're facing?
So the other challenge is we have one of the most brilliant and harsh wildlife legislations in the world. We are talking of enhanced penalties all the way up to life imprisonment. And right now we are going over amendments to make sure and to fund those provisions that if you actually buy ivory and if you actually traffic in ivory, that the price of ivory will be life imprisonment. Mm-hmm. So it is one thing to have this law on the books and it's another to implement them. So we are seeing a lot of the cases that I'm actually going into where it's a serious trafficking offense and a trafficking case, where there's only 1 or 2 people who are being brought to court. So we are still missing so many people. Then again, we have a very high number of fugitives in many of these cases. As we speak, we are speaking of 10 high-profile fugitives in just the cases that we are dealing with.
What is a fugitive?
Oh yeah, a fugitive is someone who escapes from the jurisdiction of a court or runs away from law enforcement.
There's so much jargon in this.
I know.
So a fugitive is somebody who's run away, basically.
Yeah, run away from the law and run away from arrest.
Okay.
So they usually run.
So Faisal was a fugitive. He ran away.
Yes. Faisal was a fugitive and ran from law enforcement officers and was in Tanzania until he was arrested and handed over and expatriated into Kenya to face trial. but he was a fugitive for 6 months, and he was on Interpol's red notice, as you know, as a wanted fugitive. A red notice now is truly an alert sent to all law enforcement agencies in the world to arrest whoever is on that list on site. That is not Santa's naughty list. That is
right. Yeah. So he was a fugitive. He got arrested. He was convicted. He's in jail, but he's also appealing that sentence, right? Yes. What is the risk that he'll actually succeed?
Now he is appealing against his conviction and sentence. He feels that he shouldn't have been put in prison for that amount of time. He feels through his lawyer that the case was not handled well. He feels that the evidence cannot be linked to him. Now, during his case, there were a couple of key events that specifically may have affected the outcome of his case. One, there was tampering of evidence inquiry. This is where the ivory was impounded to be, where it was actually determined to be in his custody. 9 cars went missing. So as a result, the entire crime scene was tampered with.
Okay.
Yeah. So as a result, then the magistrate was handling the case.
So wait.
Yeah.
So he's a criminal. He's arrested. The vehicles used in the commission of the crime disappear, and he's using this as a reason why he should be released from jail, even though he probably, or let me not say probably, he might have even been the guy behind the disappearance of those vehicles.
Well, yeah, and now this is the funny thing. So up until today, that magistrate has not rendered a ruling as to whether the evidence was tampered with or not. So as a result, it remains as a question, a challenge to the current judge to determine, can I convict someone on evidence that wasn't determined whether it's real or tainted with?
Okay, so it's obviously very complex, and there are loads and loads of nitty-gritty details. That's on an ivory case, which everybody would hope is a really simple, open and closed case. It's clearly, even those are complex. What are the other major wildlife crimes that are being committed in Kenya?
So currently, one of the most prevalent wildlife crimes is the illegal grazing in national parks. Now, most of our national parks...
Illegal grazing, what is that?
Now, illegal grazing is where without a permit or without authority, someone who is herding cattle herds them into the national park, of course, to take advantage of the vegetation in the national park. Now, this has been held as, of course, an offense in that national parks need to be managed, and as a result, when people, without being beyond regulation, without being given permits, walk into parks and start feeding off vegetation everywhere, it tampers and creates a competition for wildlife and their food that they should be getting. Then secondly, wildlife traffickers and essentially wildlife poachers go into some of these protected areas under the cover of grazing.
Oh, so they look like they're grazers, but actually they're poachers.
Yeah, some of them are poachers, but this is not to say all of them are.
So the law has been quite lenient on people doing illegal grazing. They treat it like it's a less of a serious crime.
And to show you how less of a serious crime it is, right now, if you, Paula Kahumbo, walk into a national park without a license or a permit, you will be liable to a sentence of 2 years in prison and 200,000 fine. But if you, Paula Kahumbo, walk into the national park with a goat on a leash, that sentence shoots down to a maximum 6 months and a maximum 30,000 shillings. So literally, you will expect with the goat you'll commit much of the crime.
You just told us how to commit crime.
I know, I've just taught you how to, but that's the loophole that is there.
Yeah, okay.
And it is not a deterrence.
Right.
It truly isn't.
But the new amendments that are being proposed, they'll take care of that problem?
No, that's the one of the problems that they're not taking care of. They haven't sorted out that difference or that dissonance in penalties.
So there is still a problem.
There is a missed opportunity there, and we were key to highlight this when we sent our comments to the amendments. Up until last Monday, that is when we were supposed to lodge in, our comments to the new amendments that are being proposed.
Okay, great. So what else is happening on the legal office? I'm just going to show people what your desk looks like. There's a plant. So he deals with trees and plants, not just elephants. There's our sticker ant. There's the elephant.
Yeah.
So what else are you dealing with in In your office, you have a team of young people. Tell us what else is going on that we need to know about.
So literally, we are primarily into legal research. One of the areas that we are researching on is trying to empower Kenyan citizens with the necessary information and the necessary tools for them to know how to respond to a specific environmental crime or something that affects their environment. Just to bring things close to home is the case of the Solai Dam. Now, with the dam breaking and killing scores of people, no one knew how they ought to report. It will shock most people that their first port of call shouldn't be the police. And chances are the police don't even know what to do at that point. They ought to have complained to the proper authorities and channels, NEMA, WANMA, the county government.
So if I'm somebody living downstream of a dam that's been built illegally, how do I report it to NEMA?
So through the research we are working on, we are trying to come up with a very simple, easy guide, translated into Swahili, that Kenyan can actually go through over and understand that, hey, if I'm living downstream to a dam which is being built legally, and chances are it will be a risky construction which might affect me in the future, I can complain first of all to NEMA through the enforcement wing. They are really aggressive at this.
So I complain what, in a phone call? I go to the physical, make a visit, I write a letter, what do I do?
Sure. This is usually a formal complaint which is through a letter. So it's simply reference to the NEMA Enforcement Committee detailing what your problem is, and generally they ought to respond to that within 30 days. If they don't do that, you escalate it to now the higher echelons and higher levels in the NEMA Enforcement Committee.
So there obviously is a very good law and there are procedures, but the average citizen has no idea where to get that information.
Exactly.
So you're creating a toolkit that anybody can access.
Just a simple toolkit, and ideally the idea is to even oversimplify it even more. The idea is to even collate all this information into a tiny app which 93% of Kenyans who now currently have a smartphone can easily access.
Oh, what? So you could just like generate a letter, like with a click of a button?
Now, hopefully that's the idea, because all of them, remember, are just templates. So if it's a letter, it will have the general template of who you are and where you're sending it to and the date and the reference. The rest of the content, it's just purely yours. But templates are things that should be available to most Kenyans.
That would be really useful, because I get so many people writing to me in Facebook, on Twitter, in Instagram, on LinkedIn. I get hundreds of messages every month, people asking me, what can I do? This has happened. Can you help me? Can you come? And if I don't respond, they start saying that I've not been helpful. So this will be really make a big difference.
Because if I'm a resident of Nairobi and I see a company, say a tannery company, pouring effluent into a river,
right
now, specifically, I may think the police are the first port of call for this to report a criminal offense, but you'll have a hard time finding what that criminal offense is and where it is. Now, at that point, there are over 3 agencies that someone can call for this, and people need to understand how to interact with them and how to correctly.
So let me give you a specific example.
Sure.
Near my house, there's a building that came up. It's an apartment block, and there's the litter and the taka, the rubbish from that apartment block is just being thrown on the roadside. I did call the police, for the local police, and they just looked at me like I was crazy, because what's it got to do with them? So who should I write to?
First of all, they were right to look at you crazy. It has nothing to do with them. So you had to write to, first of all, the NCA, the National Construction Authority. I want to think if it's in your area, it is a controlled development. They don't have to build such an apartment. And if so, they ought to have.
It's not the building. It's the rubbish.
I know they must have clear standards on how to deal with that. Because for every residential building you build,
there should have been an EIA.
Yeah, there should have been that. Not necessarily an EIA, but ideally, as you build it, it's a residential building. You have to know how to deal with the waste itself.
Okay.
Either human, kitchen waste, whichever waste it will be.
Okay, I'm looking forward to seeing these templates and these letters, because I think I have about 100 letters that I need to write about all the neighbors around me who are busy throwing their rubbish into the river or on the roadside. or they are planting the wrong kind of plants along the hedgerows, like cactuses, which I know it's illegal, or they are cutting down trees, and some people are even hunting the wildlife in our area.
And it's very important that you first know which agency to report to first, because if you were to sue them directly, the judge will ask you first thing, Paula, did you go to NEMA to complain about this? Because this seems like a NEMA issue. If you hadn't, they'll tell you first exhaust that low level authority first, deal with that issue. And if they don't, you can bring it or escalate it to court.
Okay, personally, I think that there's far too much bureaucracy. Why can't I just arrest them myself?
Well, yeah, you can. So citizen arrests are perfectly legal. But now here's the thing. To arrest them, you must hand them over to the police, who will institute charges from them.
But at least I'll embarrass them.
Yeah, but you can only embarrass people for too long.
Okay, thanks, Jim. That was really fascinating. All right, you need to get back to work, I'm sure. Okay.
Thank you.